Welcome to the Oasis Network Roadshow. My name is Tom Arnould, and I have a very interesting guest in the studio with me today. He's the state treasurer of the state of Oklahoma, and his name is Todd Russ.
Hey, Tom, good to be back. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm very glad that you're here, and we're right here north of the Capitol, downtown Oklahoma City area, and we're just going to talk today about your role as the state treasurer. Number one, I'm going to say thank you for carving out the time to be a part of this.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to get to be on the roadshow.
So we had you when you were serving in the House you and Representative Danny Williams shared a little bit about your journey. I think that the Oasis listeners would find that kind of fascinating. Now, I want to make this real clear. This is my disclaimer. I realize there are people in Virginia listening to this program. There are people in Ohio and Missouri, and there's a whole host of people listening online all over the nation. So we are going to brag a little bit about the state of Oklahoma today. So
Sure.
Wherever state you're in, I'm sure you feel proud of that state, and we feel thankful for the state of Oklahoma in the role of Todd Russ.
Absolutely. If you're listening to the Oasis Network, you've got to love Oklahoma, too. We're all kind of, we see a lot of things the same in those states, and proud of it. Oklahoma, I've committed to be one of the leaders to make a difference in our country, and starting with Oklahoma and kind of the Midwest and kind of the Bible, well, I'd say the buckle of the Bible Belt in some ways. I think a lot of us claim that, but I do too. And that includes showing up as Christians at your state capitals and at our national capital.
So treasurer of the state of Oklahoma. You know, since this is a Christian network, I thought I would just think about this word treasurer. And I may talk about that a little bit. But, you know, there are people in the Bible that they were specifically referred to as the treasurer. Of course, one of the most obvious would be Acts chapter 8, when there was the Ethiopian eunuch that was the treasurer for the nation of Ethiopia. And so he came to faith through the ministry of Philip. But there's this other fellow by the name of Erastus. We don't have a lot of information about him. He's in Romans 16. And this word Erastus, it says he was a chamberlain. That's the King James. Most all other translations use the word treasurer. What I think is interesting, that Greek word is where we get the word economics. So, you know, you're in a Bible place here. You know, by that I mean you serving. There are others that preceded you in the faith serving in their role.
Yeah, that's great history there, Tom. You helped me out on that. I feel a little better about myself now. That's fantastic. I will clarify that the treasurer is not the tax collector. A lot of people say, hey, you're taking too much of my money. And it's like, no. I am not the tax collector. I'm your friendly local neighborhood banker that they deposited in when they collected at the tax commission or somewhere like that. But I do take my position and my role very serious. It is a constitutionally created position for the state of Oklahoma, and I suspect most states. And the trust of the people that are the taxpayers, I take taxes as a very sacred thing. I mean, it's like the people's offering to not necessarily to God, but to the government. And it's not my money. It's not the state's money. It's the taxpayers' money, and it's precious. It's hard to come by. And we want to be really, really careful and be good stewards. You know, Jesus gave us a great example of the talents, and I want to be the one that turns it into 100-fold. God's blessed me with a background in finance and investments and numbers, and this is just a really unique opportunity for a guy like me.
So I talked to Bill Kern just recently, and he was telling me that you guys had been on a trip together or drove down to the Dallas area or something. And he goes, wow, Todd was telling me about this stuff that's going on in the state of Oklahoma. And he was like, a lot of it was over my head, but it sounded really good. You know, it's very interesting. So I thought perhaps based on that conversation, we could cover some of that. You know, I did go online and I looked at the Office of the Oklahoma State Treasurer provides for a safe and efficient operation of state government through effective banking, investment, and cash management. Those three areas. So when you think of those areas, obviously your background in banking kind of plays into that.
Yeah, you know, I was just a small town country boy, farm ranch kid, come from a big family, grew up barefoot, happy, and didn't know any difference. We didn't have anything extra and didn't think a thing about it because nobody else in my neighborhood did anyway. But I just can't begin to tell you how many doors God just continued to open. Actually got to go to college and get a degree in finance. As a kid out in the cotton patch or pulling a cow out of the quicksand in the creek, I dreamed of having a great clean job inside, doing something smart and loving that. And I actually worked my way through college, paid my way through college. It took me a while, and got a degree in finance, actually international finance, and went on to get a graduate degree in bank management. And so I've had a chance to have a great career in banking, went through the hard times of the late 80s, early 90s as a kid starting out. I mean, talk about kind of the bug-eyed, what have I got myself into moment. All the banks in this region were failing right and left, and seeing all that really, it shaped me and my career going forward and gave me some incredible experience on how to get financial problems that people may have or business may have, get them out of trouble and try to keep them out of trouble.
So all of us have different roles in life. All of us have different callings and giftings, abilities, etc. When I was going through this job description for the state treasurer, I thought it was very interesting, receiving, depositing, and dispersing all state funds, investing state funds and specific funds for other state agencies where authorized. I mean, everything from the unclaimed property category to managing and overseeing the 529 college savings plans, processing and distributing all state payments. There's a lot to that job description, so I'm glad that you like banking.
Well, it is surprising for people that it's hard to get your head around what a treasurer does, a state treasurer, but you're right. I mean, people would be surprised at the role that constitutional position requires. I'm on 10 different boards and commissions, chair several of those. I've had 4 boards and 1 investment committee in the last 2 days or 3 days. It's exhausting, but it's fun if you're kind of into that. I will say I need to back up. When I started out in my career and I got my degree in finance and always thought I wanted to be in banking, had a family friend that I grew up with that had the little community bank and always thought that's where I wanted to go. And when I got my first job offer, serious professional job offer to go into banking, I literally panicked. I really thought, I don't know if I can really do this. What I hear about bankers is you got to lie and not tell the truth and all these aggressive ideas you see on Wall Street. And I panicked and I asked God, help me with this. I'm committed to you, life or death. Can I go into this role and be honest and still keep my job as a banker? And it was like he just shook his finger at me and said, Todd, if you don't go into that role, who do you think will? And if you can't be honest in that role, can you not be honest in anything else? And it was really, it was a real amusing confirmation to me. I think God probably got a real kick out of it. But I was pretty serious. I think he was laughing about it. But, so that was a great beginning for me, revelation. It's like, no, if we don't fill these places as godly people that are committed to the values and the standards, biblical standards that he's given us, who will? So that's really set my life in motion for where I am today. And now as a state treasurer, it's really an amazing place to be and the different things. I mean, I literally, when you're talking about dealing with, it's not hundreds of thousands and millions, it's billions. I mean, we manage over $15 billion just in the Treasury's portfolio. Then we have probably over $40 billion in other pensions and things that the state has that's public. And then we process through the banking operations, the day-to-day operations for the agencies, probably $20 to $24 billion a year. So it's really amazing. But I got to tell you, God is just given me such a great time to see him and his hand literally guiding me and leading me along in some of the stuff. I'm just amazed every day. It's truly amazing.
I think of our first interview we aired on the Oasis Network, and I remember you kind of went through this season of your life. You shared how that I was kind of struggling. Is there some type of ministerial call on my life, some type of pastoral call on my life? I mean, I don't know exactly what what it's supposed to look like. And it just, the deeper you got into pursuing that, it just didn't seem like the door opened up. And here you are as you served in the house. How many years did you serve in the house?
13.
13 years. Yeah. So you termed out there. Yeah. And I remember those days when you think, hey, I'm going to go after this state treasurer's position. And I came across this quote, okay? So if you remember, let's just do a timeline here, 1940, and we're talking about Churchill. We're talking at a time when the German armies had conquered France, and they were moving towards Great Britain. You know, there was a lot of darkness. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of desire for other countries to how could we broker some type of compromise with Hitler. And in the midst of all that, Churchill said, no, this is going to be Britain's finest hour. And then he made this statement. He said, I felt as if I was walking with destiny, that all my past life had been but a preparation for this hour in this trial.
Wow.
And so when I think of you serving, pulling calves and doing all those things, that was just preparation for the day that you're living in now.
Yeah, it had to be. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. And you're right. I when I got into banking, I think from the time I was 15, my first commitment was to serve the Lord, and have had a great relationship. I mean, he's my very best friend spiritually, and I did. I got, I had 3 little bitty kids. Christy and I were both in professional lives. She was a school teacher for 20 years. And there was a place in there that I just thought God really wanted me to be in a ministry.
Yeah, and it is a ministry. Tell you what, Todd, let's take a break right now. We'll come back on the other side of the break, and we'll continue our talk with our state treasurer, Todd Russ.
I'm David Warren, here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world.
Welcome back to the Road Show. My name is Tom Arnould. I have the privilege today of being your host, and we are here just north of the Oklahoma State Capitol. I'm with the treasurer of the state of Oklahoma. His name is Todd Russ, and he's also a friend to the Oasis Network. Todd, welcome to today's Road Show.
Wow, it's great to be on the Road Show. Thank you, Tom.
So, Todd, I'm thinking about how you were saying, I want to get me a job where I'm not having to pull these calves, and I'm not having to be out in this bitter cold, and I'm not having to work so hard. And then now that's what you're doing on the weekends, right? That's your hobby job.
Well, yeah, it is. It's interesting how you kind of come full circle. I thought I didn't really want to have a career in that, and have had a wonderful career in banking and finance, but you know what they say, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. And it's like therapy, having my cattle and get on the tractor and go out there and plow up some ground and see the wheat come up. I don't do nearly as much as I used to, but I call it therapy, and I still have some cows and do a little bit of wheat, and yeah, so that's my therapy.
And maybe it helps you to stay in touch with your constituents, the people that have elected you, the people that represent this great state. You know, Todd, there's a saying, and that is, if you have a teenager and they're spending too much time on the screen, too much screen time, that they just need to go outside and touch some grass, is what they'll say. Well, you're out there touching grass every weekend, and wheat and miscellaneous other things. So we're talking about how Churchill made the statement, I felt as if I was walking with destiny, that all of my past life had been but preparation for this hour in this trial. There was a time that Churchill realized, hey, the fact that I'm a pretty good communicator, The Lord's going to use that on the radio as I rally the morale of our nation. And he began to realize I can piece back that maybe I'm not just an accident happening on the scene, but there's some divine orchestration to all this. And honestly, Todd, this is not flattery. I think it's sincerely in my heart saying, I think you can look back on your life and say, hey, there's a sense of orchestration that God has arranged this and he's got you for such a time as this.
Absolutely. It's truly amazing, and it's really kind of exciting too when you see how God kind of plans things out and you don't really know how well he's got those things planned out for you, and then you realize you're so blessed. It's just unbelievable. But there was a point where Christy and I had small children, and I really felt this tug to be in ministry, and God told me, you need to study to show yourself approved, and kind of struggle with that, and didn't really struggle with it, but I was kind of trying to process that. And the Berean University School of the Bible was part of our fellowship organization. That's a opportunity to get your credentials in ministry, and I knew about it, and this kept coming up in my mind, and he was just kind of tugging at me, and I thought, man, I have got to do that. I have got to do that. I was kind of excited because I wanted to learn, and I thought that was a great opportunity. So I enrolled in that, and boy, it was pretty tough. I just barely could get going, and actually I really kind of just put it on hold for a while. It was just such a hard process to do with little kids and working long hours, and finally, God rearranged my life to make it possible, and it all started falling together, and I finally was able to finish and got credentials in ministry. And actually, part of that process, you actually have to go to churches and preach so many times to get your certification and credentials. And I'd been doing that for about a year, and wow, I was working. Christy and I were working full time, had 3 little kids. I was preaching all over western Oklahoma and southeast Oklahoma, and weekends, dragging my family in late on Sunday night and going back to work and being in the office at 7:30 and ready to go. And after a while, it just got to the point I said, God, you have got to help me. You have got to get me in or get me out. I'll go to a little dinky church if that's where you want me to pastor or whatever you want, but I just don't know if I can keep doing this work and preaching on the weekends and be a good dad and a good husband. And we kind of went through this conversation, and he said, Todd, I'll open the doors if you'll go through them. And I thought, well, okay, God, whatever door you open, I'll go through. And I saw this little dumpy church in the middle of nowhere in some country road that I was probably going to have to go through. And I don't know if it was the next day or in just the next 2 or 3 days, I had the most disruptive phone call for me at that time. And it just happened to be a headhunter looking for an executive officer in another bank. And it was like, God, this is not a little dumpy church in the middle of the country somewhere. And it was like he said, I know it. He said, I don't want you to be in the traditional pulpit ministry, being a pastor. I want you to minister in the marketplace, in your office, in the city, wherever I place you. And it was obviously it was a very emotional time, because it was like he had just kind of hit reset for me. And he wasn't taking me out of the ministry, and he wasn't making me to suffer to be in the ministry. He was allowing me to be in a ministry in a role that he had prepared me for in the financial arena, in the business arena, in the marketplace. And I can't tell you how many times people would come to my office after I got further into my career in banking and even before, and would come to my office and literally just want to close the door and ask me to pray for them. It just multiple things like that I could see. It was incredible. God was giving me these great opportunities that it's like, God, how do you do this in the 3rd floor of a bank building office, or downtown Oklahoma City, or some of the places that were just available for me that were absolutely incredible. And it's been an incredible opportunity, and I've never ignored the call for that to be a ministry in my life. And then we go on and on.
So, Todd, today, as I'm preparing, I got up early this morning and I thought, hey, I don't really have a lot of background to interview state treasurers. Okay, so I'm going to be real with you. This is my first interview with a state treasurer. So I thought, well, what does the Bible have to say about treasurer? And you know what I thought was very interesting? I told my wife about this before I came down for this interview. You know who was in charge of the treasury? It was the Levites, the very people that were responsible for the nation of Israel, putting together the worship, putting together the facilities, assisting the priests when it came to corporate worship. God turned over the treasury to the Levites. So I'm saying that from a ministerial standpoint, he didn't make a distinction between the worship team and the people that are managing resources, but it was all combined together there. And so when I read that, I thought to myself, boy, that probably takes a lot of pressure off a lot of people in ministry, that maybe they're the CFO of a company, or maybe it's a church treasurer, or it is one of those smaller towns where they're just a deacon, that's their role, is taking care of the finances. But that's a very sacred trust. It's a very important role. And just the whole concept of stewardship, we think of Joseph, of course, being the ideal Old Testament character of a person who, he took 20% of the gross national product, set it away. There was going to be 7 years of famine, and he was ready. He's ready for the bad times because he had made preparation in the good times. So, Todd, whenever I talked to Bill this week, he was telling me about these things that you were just so thankful for. Like, hey, look what we've accomplished. Look at some of the things that have kind of been a real benefit to our state, to our taxpayers, to our citizens of the state. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're really thankful for, some of the accomplishments that have happened.
It's just been really interesting coming into the position and having the background and being in the legislature for 13 years, actually termed out. And it was really unusual that this position even opened up. It wasn't expected to open up. It was normally it wouldn't open up, and the position opened up, and it was an open race for the treasurer's position in the state of Oklahoma. And it was like God just kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you're not through. Just move over. This is where I want you to be. And it was just absolutely perfect. I mean, I'd had a career in banking and the legislative side of it and understood that. So moving into the Treasury for me was absolutely delightful. It really kind of took me off of the big battlefield. And, I just have little battles once in a while in the Treasury. And compared to the legislative time that I spent serving the people. But, coming in, having a banking background, it was interesting how God started showing me things that were best practices, things that maybe we could do better, things we really maybe shouldn't be doing that way, and have gone in and been able to make some changes and not trying to be disruptive, but sometimes change is disruptive and you've got to do it anyway. And we've been able to find some opportunities where the pricing and the way that the service providers are really dealing with us, I noticed right away they were not paying us things that we really ought to be paid for. For instance, we have hundreds of millions of dollars in different banks and different accounts, and one of those holds $300 and some million a lot of times, generally on a rolling average. And that money, we sweep it, but there's a time in there, maybe overnight, that they can actually maybe use that money. And so they were giving us credits for it, but they weren't paying us interest on the overnight deposits, and they were offsetting our service charges for the transactions in that account with the credits they were allowing us. So we'd built up this huge pile of credits. It's kind of like frequent flyer miles, but we was never going to be able to use them because it was way more than we were actually allowed. So I called them in and said, we've got to talk about this account structure that we've got.
So you were able to make some changes that ultimately would be a benefit to our taxpayers and to the citizens of our state. So I tell you what, let's do, Todd. Let's take a break right now. And then on the other side of this break, we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that you are grateful for, some of the accomplishments that under God you've been able to do. And so we'll take a break at this time. We'll come right back right after the break with Todd Russ.
I'm Karen Jensen Salisbury, one of the hosts you hear on the Oasis Network Roadshow. For 35 years, this 1 hour of the day has inspired and motivated you, our listeners, with thousands of stories of people whose lives demonstrate the truth that with God, all things are possible. It's an hour that you should make a part of your day, Monday through Friday, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Roadshow, an Oasis Network presentation.
In case you're just joining us for today's Roadshow, my name is Tom Arnould, and we have a very special guest in the studio today. And our studio is north of the state capitol, and our special guest is the treasurer of the state of Oklahoma, and his name is Todd Russ. Todd, we're so glad that you're on the Oasis Radio Network today.
Thank you, Tom. It is so good to be on the Oasis Network.
Yeah, we're thankful for the Oasis. And I did bring your request to our founder, David Ingalls, that we need a stronger signal in western Oklahoma.
Yes.
And I have a message from him. Download the app.
Yeah.
That's what he said. We have an app. Maybe you can listen to the app and you can hear that signal a little stronger. And that way, when you're out feeding cattle,
absolutely,
when you're out there working in the fields, you're just able to put on the Oasis nonstop. So one of the things that our treasurer, Todd Russ, has been sharing a little bit about is that his background in banking kind of feeds in. A lot of times we're in these seasons of our life, we think, Lord, is this what I'm doing now ever going to be a benefit down the road? And sometimes we see 2020 when we're down the road, what we're not seeing when we're 24, 25, 26 years old and we're just plugging away. And in this case, you're seeing that, hey, there's some things I learned in banking that are real helpful right now.
Yeah, it's a constitutional statewide elected position. The state treasurer in Oklahoma is, but as we've had other conversations about my previous life and the call on my life from God, that even as a state treasurer, my call and commitment is to always look Christ-like and show other people that no matter what your role is in life, you can be Christ-like. You should be Christ-like, and there should be no separation in your life and your values and what you stand for, and 1 foot in and 1 foot out of your day-to-day life. Yeah, God's given me some great opportunities to serve the state of Oklahoma, and I want to be a good steward, just like the Bible talks about, giving us the talents and use those. And I want to see 100-fold. One of the things I noticed when I first came in, I was talking earlier about how they were giving us credits on our accounts, but they weren't paying us any interest. They were just calling them credits against our service charges, and we were racking up enormous balances of these credits, but we could only use them against the service charge, which would have never caught up. It was growing outrageously, and I knew as a banker that they should be paying us. I don't need some vinyl luggage from my frequent flyer miles that I'm going to cash in on 50 cents a dollar. I want cash. So I called them in and said, guys, look, that's awful nice of you to offset our service charges with credits, but we want to change that. And they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, you know what I want to do. I want cash. And they said, oh, we've got a banker now. And so we argued and discussed and negotiated. And by the time it was over, they were going to cut the state of Oklahoma check. And I allowed them to it was such a large number. I said, look, you can pay it out over the next 3 years. You can do it in increments.
Wow.
But it was over $3 million that we were setting out there that they were never going to pay us until I called them on the carpet, and now they're going to start paying interest on that each quarter. So that was a great thing for the state of Oklahoma, and have had several things like that have happened since I've been in.
So what is the condition of the state of Oklahoma financially? I mean, are we sitting in a good place?
Yes, Oklahoma's in a fantastic place. The world and national economies are kind of slowing down, and meant to. The feds are trying to slow it down, but Oklahoma in general is in a fantastic place, probably the best place it's ever been in history. The treasurer, my office, is generating, as of this quarter, we projected something like somewhere between $50 and $80 million. We're going to generate $280 million just through the treasury out of the portfolio that we're making the money make money. And that's not the revenue from the taxpayers. That's just making the money make money. And next year, we project that to be about $335 million versus $50 to $80 million in the past. So we've got some great wind to our back. Things are good. I like to think I'm making some smart changes. We've gone on the Bloomberg platform on our trading and gives us a lot of, it opens up a great market for us, gets some good pricing. And so it's been really super.
That's a neat story right there. So there's this, I guess you'd say, kind of a passive income that's coming because of just moving things around, making some changes, and just a fresh set of eyes to say, hey, wait a minute, more than credits, we need cash.
Yeah. Yeah, we had another provider that a bank, a large bank, was doing a couple of different services for us. One of those was securities lending. That's kind of a passive secondary role that they were playing, and they weren't too interested in it. They just kind of provided it because they had the other business, and we're paying us about $250,000 a year on our securities lending program. And so I came in and brought in another provider, negotiated, started the conversation, said, hey, look, you guys are more of the front end of securities lending. Tell me what you can do for us. So long story short, we were making about $250,000, $300,000 from our previous provider. By really getting in the game and getting someone that is their number one job, is to the duty of them to make that perform. We're projected to make on that $250,000 we were making, we're going to turn that into $12 to $15 million a year just for the state of Oklahoma out of the Treasury.
That's a great story right there. Now, I want to say this, as I said at the beginning of the program. I recognize there's people in Ohio, there's Buckeyes listening to this, there's people in Virginia, Missouri, and really people that are listening online from a lot of states that are outside of Oklahoma. And this isn't just an Oklahoma broadcast, but it's just a picture of how God can take a person that is just at a young age saying, hey, I'm just trying to do what's right. I'm not even sure what right is right now, but I'm just trying to be faithful and just walk through open doors, and how that you get down the road a little ways. And every story is going to look a little different. But in your case, the way the Lord was able to blend the interest that you had in banking and the interest you had in finance and kind of mix that all together. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, Todd, Russ, I took finance in college, and I got through it, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it like that. So, I'm thankful for people like you that really enjoyed it.
Well, it is. I'm enjoying it probably more than I ever have. Like I said, when I first started out in banking, it was in the late 80s, 90s. I'm telling you, it was the crash. So I'm on the back end of that. It's just the greatest time for me to be in this position. We had another situation. We have our Oklahoma 529s, an education savings program, tax deferred. A lot of states, about every state has it. And so I came in and kind of started engaging with the program manager. They were charging us about 20 basis points on that. And just the other day, we renegotiated that down to half of what that fee had been. So those are just great wins for the state of Oklahoma and the people of Oklahoma that I really think God's just given them to me, and I give him all the glory for it.
So when we think about this word in the scripture that talks about treasurer, I mentioned this Erastus in the Greek New Testament, the language of the Greek New Testament. This word is translated, sometimes it's used the word chamberlain, which is a chamber, somebody that oversees like a chamber, or in more modern translations will use the word treasurer. But in the original Greek, it's really the picture of this is translated a house distributor or a house manager, or somebody who's overseeing the financial affairs of a house. And so you see that there's this gentleman that's actually mentioned 3 times in the New Testament that some believe that he traveled with the Apostle Paul, that was his background. So I'm saying this to our listeners out there, maybe you're right now listening to this program and you're on your lunch break and you're working in the banking business, or maybe you're working in some other field that you're thinking, how can this be connected to ministry? But you know what? If you're helping people and if you're serving people and you're being an encouragement to people, you're in the ministry, because the word minister means serve. And, Jesus said the greatest among you is going to be the servant. He, right before, the end of his life, what did he do? Before the crucifixion and resurrection, he got down and washed the disciples' feet. And he said, look, if I'm willing to wash your feet, you need to be willing to wash one another's feet. So at the end of the day, servanthood is what it's all about. So when I think about this concept of, people being stewards. That's another word. In other words, the steward is somebody it's not my property. I mean, this isn't Todd Russ's property. This is the state of Oklahoma. These are the citizens of Oklahoma's property. And what I'm doing is simply managing that resource.
Absolutely. And then I try to remind myself of that regularly. But it is not my money. It's not the state's, the government's money. It's the people's money that we're tasked with, taking care of it and managing it and be efficient with it. One of the other things the treasurer's position is required to do is keep up with unclaimed property in the state of Oklahoma for people in the state. And that is not surplus taxes. That is literally, if you lose your billfold, it could come to unclaimed property theoretically. That's usually it's stuff like life insurance policies, minerals, oil and gas royalties, those kinds of things that an estate or a family didn't have heirs or didn't settle their estate correctly and they don't know what to do with it. They send it to the state treasurer's office, and we have to search and try to reconcile that ownership. And it is a big job, but we have over $1 billion in unclaimed property. A lot of it's cash, a lot of it's monetary, but some of it's fine china and grandma's wedding ring and pocket watches. It's just really remarkable. But that's part of what the treasurer's job is to try to find the people that belongs to and get it back to them.
And so if you pick up a paper, I know a lot of you may not be reading papers, but a lot of small towns in Oklahoma, we still have papers. In the city of Yukon, we have a paper that, if you want to find out what's going on in our community, you get that paper. And they still post that unclaimed treasure. And I want you to know there is an article that I faithfully read, and I look for my name. Now, I haven't found my name yet, but I have found some of my friends' names, and I will call them and tell them, hey, your name's on that list.
Put the word out.
You want to get a hold of that. So tell us some websites. Maybe there's some websites out there that might be a benefit to the listeners that they would find be beneficial.
On the unclaimed property, yourmoney.ok.gov is a website you can go to. Oklahoma529.com is one for education savings programs. OK.gov/treasurer. You can Google the treasurer of Oklahoma. It's really easy to find. And you can actually come to the state capitol and walk up to the second floor around the corner from the governor's office and come see me in the state treasurer's office in Oklahoma.
And it's a beautiful place to come. I mean, if you live in Oklahoma and if you're a citizen of this state, you need to come to the Capitol. It's absolutely beautiful. I had somebody tell me this, and they said, I've traveled, and I think they'd said, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but I want to say they said like 40 different capitals, and they said, this is like top, this is like in the top tier here. This is a beautiful capital. So we're going to take a break, and on the final portion of this roadshow today, we're going to talk a little bit about a day that you and Representative Danny Williams made very special for the founder of the Oasis Network, David Ingalls. So we'll be right back right after this.
I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to this final segment of today's Roadshow. My name is Tom Arnould. I have with me today our very special guest. He's the treasurer of the state of Oklahoma. His name is Todd Russ. So Todd was instrumental in putting together a special day where we honored the founder of the Oasis Network. And of course, we're talking about David Ingalls. And there was a day last year that Todd was able to get with Danny Williams, and they said, hey, let's do a special day. Let's do a presentation. And in this presentation, let's just have David Ingalls, whomever he invites, come down and let's just honor him, read a citation. And I was with David Ingalls that day, and I was with Sharon Ingalls that day. That was a special day, Todd. And I want to say on behalf of the Oasis Network, thank you. They have that citation when you walk into their station there in Broken Arrow. It's right there on the wall. And, of course, your name's right there. So I'm going to play that. Okay. This is going to be about a 4-minute listen for you that are online or those of you that are listening to the broadcast. And you'll be able to be blessed because it'll take you back to that day at the state capitol, and we had the special time of honoring David Ingalls.
And Russ, you are recognized for a floor presentation.
There's a whole lot of people going home. By the signs of time, it won't be long. In the twinkling of an eye, we'll all be gone. There's a whole lot of people going home.
Members, it's my privilege and honor to recognize a great Oklahoman, and with me today are Senator Nathan Dahm, representing Todd Russ, representing Kevin McDougal. We're here to pay tribute to David Ingalls, and David Ingalls created the Oasis radio network with the following stations in Broken Arrow, Moore, Oklahoma City, Yorktown, Hampton, Virginia, Branson, Springfield, Beach City, Canton, Ohio, and translators in Enid, McAllister, Miami, Ponca City, and Lawton. So he's got the largest gospel radio station network, gospel music, in the state of Oklahoma. David Ingalls' goals for his listeners is to make life-changing principles known to each listener. As people listen to the Oasis Network, they can find rest, peace, hope, and encouragement and a new life in Christ. David Ingalls is a kind, gentle, loving, and passionate man. David Ingalls was the founding pastor of Walnut Grove Church in Broken Arrow. David was born in Cleveland, Oklahoma. He also attended what is now known as Southern Nazarene University, representing Stark. He's gone to the same place we have. David Ingalls traveled with and sang in services held by Kenneth E. Hagin, who was responsible for Rhema Bible School, and Oral Roberts of Tulsa. David has a silk and satin golden voice through which his songs have blessed hundreds of thousands of people. In closing, I want to share a truth that was also disclosed to David Ingalls years ago. And I heard this on the radio before I ever met him. And this statement that I'm going to read to you has ministered to me for decades. David Ingalls said, "The Lord spoke to me and told me some things. And he said that as I sang, his anointing would flow and from us, and if the people would believe in as you sing, the anointing will heal, deliver, set free those in bondage. Needs will be met, and harmony will come to the home, for it's the anointing that breaks the yoke." And I'm here to tell you that the blessing from that statement has ministered to me for several decades. Let's get a great Oklahoma House of Representatives to David Ingalls, please. Members, there will be a reception in the House Lounge after this if you want to come in and meet Pastor David Ingalls and maybe take a picture of him. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I was there that day, obviously, and Sharon Ingalls, she looked at David and said, "You come a long ways, baby." Meaning from that young boy that grew up and very small beginnings, Cleveland, Oklahoma, eventually landed in Bristow, and it's just a neat story, and it's been a blessing to the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah, what a guy! How do you frame David Ingalls? I mean, he's one of those gladiators in the modern day faith. Has been able to use his talents. I kind of associate with him on this unique future that was in front of him. He probably didn't see either, and just like me being where I am today, I didn't see that, but not to come close to comparing to what David Engel and the Oasis Network has done or the lives he's touched. It's absolutely phenomenal. And, it's one of those great people in programming ministry that's just rock solid. I mean, you can count on him sticking with the Bible and being a man of biblical foundations. And I can't say enough about him. And that was such a great day. That was in the House chambers of the state capitol, and a great honor. You don't get to come on the House floor unless you're a special guest, and so that was a special day for a really special person and his family, and just so glad. Danny Williams is another champion in the legislature that gets all the credit for it, and just a great godly man in the legislature. And I just want to throw this in, Tom. A lot of people hear about all the bad, slimy politicians and all the things you hear about, and there are a lot of them out there. But I want you to know there are a lot of fantastic, godly men and women that are I hate to say they're in politics, but they're in the arena of politics doing God's will every day. And that is such an important thing that we've got a lot of them out there, but we need a whole lot more. And I just encourage people of faith to not be afraid of the arena of politics. Politics itself may be a little bit scary, but get in the arena and be a gladiator for biblical principles while you're there, and it'll make our country and your school boards and your legislators and your city councils and all those places better places.
One of my favorite David Engel story, when I hear him sing and I think about the recognition of his life, because David Engels is like so much of a non-self-promoter. He is about as non-self-promoting as there is I've ever met. It's just, hey, I'm just here to serve, be a blessing. Well, anyway, when he was young, very young, he has a beautiful voice, and so he had recorded some songs. And so he took him, and I want to say it was Columbia Records, and he took him to this guy and said, hey, would you listen to this music and see what you think? And they said, well, we're really not looking for more vocalists. What we need in Nashville are more songwriters. And so he ended up writing some songs, kind of like a reboot. Okay, I'll give it another shot. So he writes these songs, and the guy listened to him, and then he had a meeting with him. He said, so, young man, did you write these songs? He says, yes, sir, I wrote those songs. And this guy goes, where are you working right now? He goes, well, I work at a radio station. And the guy goes, son, one day you're going to own that radio station.
Wow.
He spotted it that fast, that producer did, that you got it. And, of course, he doesn't just own one, but he owns multiple translator stations. And so, we're not trying to overdo it, but we do want to say, give honor to whom honor is due. And I want to say thank you for making that a very special day for the family and for the network itself. So we're talking about the life of Todd Russ, and maybe the takeaway for me is I just want to leave our listeners today with just encouragement that you're kind of raising. In this case, he went through a period of time. I'm raising 3 kids. I'm trying to do all that I know to do to walk through any open doors. At the end of the day, I just want to do what I feel like the Lord would have me to do with my life, not knowing that one day it would end up at the state capitol. One day you'd be, a part of this group that's meeting with the governor and making decisions that relate to not hundreds of dollars or dozens of dollars, but billions of dollars. And that's because of just walking through those doors that open up before you. So if you're listening to this program today and you think, hey, I think God just likes Todd Russ more than he does me. It's not that. It's just, we just have to just recognize those opportunities that come our way. But I want to say this, whether it had been that he was supposed to pastor that rural church for the rest of his life, you know what? Whatever the Lord asks us to do, big or small, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It just matters, are we doing what we believe the Lord would have us to do?
Absolutely. And, Tom, I was willing to serve in that little country church and suspected that's probably where I'd start, but that wasn't God's plan, and I trusted God my whole life, and in spite of him challenging me with I open the door, you go through it, and not knowing how open-ended that really was till I got that phone call that day, realize just how creative God can be with anybody's life. And when you see what He's done to my life, creative is a small word for God. It's just, He is amazing, and He's willing to do that for you. And anybody out there, if they're committed to let Him lead where you're going, it'll be a great ministry.
Maybe this is a good time to say thank you to your wife, though I haven't met her. I know Bill and Debbie know her. You know, that the time that you're commuting back and forth from Cordell, Oklahoma, back and forth from Ouachita County to come here and serve in Oklahoma County, serve at this, at our capital. Thank you to family members that helped make this a reality.
Yes, absolutely. My wife, Christy, she is my rock star. She's my high school sweetheart. I met her when she was 15 and married my high school sweetheart, and we hit 40 years just in September. So 3 wonderful kids and 5 grandkids, and Christy is absolutely, she is such a wonderful, godly lady, and could have never done it without her.
Well, I want to say thank you for being our special guest today, Todd. I mean that with all of my heart. And I want to say thank you. Maybe I need to say thank you to Bill Kern, because he's the one that started this little deal by talking about that.
Oh, Bill.
That call that he was telling me about the visit that you all had, and that kind of triggered the thought. So I want to say, on behalf of the Oasis Radio Network, my name is Tom Arnould, along with my very special guest today, the Oklahoma State Treasurer, Todd Russ. We'd like to say thank you for joining us for today's roadshow. And I want to say thank you to all of our sponsors, and also to those Watchman partners out there, those monthly supporters of the Oasis Radio Network. Thank you for making today's program possible. I'd like to send you off with a passage of Scripture that's found in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2 says, "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice." Join us next time for another great roadshow.
You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Road Show, an Oasis Network presentation.